Hey there, thanks for stopping by. I wanted to show you, if you are currently a crocheter, how easy it is to teach yourself to knit. And this is what I did. Took a little practice, but here I am, passing on my knowledge. So if you are a crocheter, you are familiar with, I hope, this particular method of holding on to your yarn. If not, maybe this video isn't for you. Maybe you'll still pick it up. I don't know. But I hold my yarn back to front for the ball, over the two fingers, and over my index finger. And when I crochet, that's how I control everything. I hold this in place here, I grab here. That's how I personally crochet. So this video is if you have a basic understanding of crochet. This also is if you don't have any concept of knitting, because that's what I'm about to show you. And I do have other videos, but they're a little more advanced because I was trying to figure out how to do certain tasks and I couldn't do them with the, what am I trying to say? I couldn't, nobody could figure out how to do certain patterns. So when you start to get into patterns, then those videos might help you. But this is my first, well, besides casting on, there is a casting on video. So feel free to check that out. So I'm taking some pretty bulky, what is this, Lion brand Woolies, thick and quick. I happen to love pointy needles. If you are new to knitting and you have a problem with your yarn slipping off of the needles and it's too much for you, try bamboo. Bamboo is super sticky. That's what I knitted on for years, and now I'm on very smooth, very pointy wooden needles, okay? Now, the difference between knitting and crochet is obviously hook versus needle. Crocheting is all done on one hook, grab, pull, and all stitches are finished as you go. Knitting is all open stitches. So it takes two needles. I typically go with a circular needle because I only need one circular set. I don't have to have 15 different types of long needles and then medium needles and double points. I'm able to do everything I need to do on circulars. So I prefer circulars. You don't have to get circulars, but if you want to save yourself some money in the long run, get interchangeable circulars. And interchangeable circulars, they unscrew. Of course, I tightened them up for this video. They unscrew here, and this cable is interchangeable to different sets of needles. Still won't focus on what I'm trying to get it to focus on. That figures. Okay, let's see. How about here? There we go. Okay, so just like crochet, the needles have different sizes. There's thin, there's thick. Now, I'm using some pretty bulky yarn just to give you some size reference. There's my thumb. So there's my thumbnail. It's pretty thick. And so for long tail cast on, you typically start a ways down the way. For a beanie, it takes me about 3 feet of yarn. I move in about 3 to 4 feet of yarn. So that's basically from my fingertip to my opposite shoulder. So instead of a slip stitch, when you're doing a long tail cast on, you can skip a slip stitch. And the yarn that faces you is the working end. Okay? Not the ball, the working end. Okay. So, crocheters, let's see if I can make this make sense for you. Okay, so for long tail cast on, which I happen to think is one of the easier ones, it's the most consistent. The edge always looks beautiful. This is my preferred cast on for 90% of my projects. So I have the working end facing me. I have the yarn ball over the back of the needle, and I'm grabbing the yarn and making basically a diamond. Okay. So I'm taking this diamond, I have it over my thumb and my index finger, and I'm going to come towards me with the needle. and I'm going to reach underneath and run with my thumb. So you see that goes with my thumb, and I'm making a hole. So I'm in the hole. Now I'm going to come over to my index finger, grab, and pull through. Pull through my thumb, going right back through my thumb. And then I'm going to give it a light tight. I'm barely going to tighten this because I need space to work with. Just like when you do your chain stitch, you want that space to work with, right? So again, still have my diamond. Working yarn is still in front on my thumb. Yarn ball is on my pointer. I'm going underneath the working yarn along my thumb, going to the point, which is over. I'm going over the ball yarn, and then I'm coming back through the thumb, and I'm releasing my thumb. And I typically give myself spacing here. Okay, I give myself a lot of spacing, usually a finger, a knuckle, whatever I need to space it out with. That's typically what I will space it out with. So again, in front, up through underneath, along my thumb, over, around, and back through. Okay, I hope I'm going slow enough. I've been doing this for, I don't know, 10 years, so, okay. Now, the reason we skip the slip stitch is, look, it's locked on. It's not going anywhere. And these are all open working stitches. If you drop this needle, they will fall out. You'll lose a stitch. You'll have to fish it out with a crochet hook. It'll be all bad. Okay, again. Under on the thumb, over on the index, through on the thumb. Now every once in a while you'll lose your twist in this yarn. That's why the working yarn sits towards you. You can let it go and the twist will come back, or you can twist it yourself. Okay, so under, over, and through. Under, over, and through. Now if you drop these, okay, just remember your yarn ball is going back here. Your working yarn is basically grabbing both here. And your working yarn is up front. Well, actually I should say the tail. This is the tail. Apologies. The tail is on your thumb. The working yarn is back here. So now that I've got that back right how it should be, ignore what I said earlier. Okay, we're going under. See that? Under, across, and over there, and then through the thumb yarn. Okay, how many do I have? 2, 4, 6, 8. Let's do 2 more. Okay. Under, over, through. Under, over, through. Now, notice, I don't know if I've showed this, I am tightening these as I go. All I gotta do is open my fingers and it cinches down. Now these ones have pretty good gaps. This will make it easier to work with. Let me do a few more since I have a bit of a tail. See how big I leave a gap here? That just gives me more stuff to work with later. Okay, so just like with crochet, you're going to turn your work. So if you're crocheting, imagine this is your chain stitch right here, okay? And this is the loop that you grab to go to your first real row, okay? So now I have Again, if you crochet like me, you hold your yarn to where you have tension between this finger here and this finger here. So I have all the control I need right there. So with this, your yarn hangs out in the back. Not everybody does this. I prefer to do this next step. You don't have to. What I like to do is I take both pieces of yarn and I lock it in. So, you know how, again, I'm holding the yarn like I would be crocheting. Now, this is my left needle, this is my right needle. I'm going to take my right needle, insert through and under. The reason I'm inserting down here is because there's a nice big working V. Let's see if we can get that to show. There's a nice big space right in there to work with. So I'm coming underneath. And I'm reaching in. Okay, now I have an X basically, right? I'm gonna take my yarn and go over. Like as if I was crocheting, but somewhat backwards, I guess. Okay, this is now basically what we're considering a hook. So I'm gonna take that yarn, make sure it's nice and tight on there, and pull it through. Oh, I stabbed something trying to come through. Okay. And now I'm going to slide the left one off, and now this is transferred to the right needle. I'm going to let go of my tail. I'm going to drop my tail. Okay. All right, there we go. Now, a lot of people don't like to do that because it makes a little bulge. I personally can't feel it. I prefer to have my yarn locked in, so that's what I do. Ooh, okay. So again, coming in from the front, underneath, to the back, with my yarn here, I'm going to grab and wrap around from left to right, and then I'm going to, I wish my camera would stay focused where I tell it to stay focused. There we go. Now I'm going to take what's on this needle, pull it through. See how it's sitting here now? And now I'm going to take this loop, that stitch, and drop it. Now this side has control of it, okay? Again, under, over, and through. I do not recommend squeaking. So if you are holding that yarn so tight that it squeaks, chill out. Okay, so slipping off, under, over, through. Under, over, through, slide, under, and just to give you an idea what this looks like in the back, I am going through the hole. So I started in the front, I'm going here. I am not going here, down the middle. If I go down the middle, I'll drop that stitch, that's bad. You need to use this loop to your advantage, okay? There we go. So I'm in the hole, I'm wrapping around, and I'm pulling forward, and I'm dropping that stitch off the left needle. And this is your knit stitch. This is a K in the patterns. So, front to back, over and around, and through. It's almost like if you were grabbing, it's very similar concept to, let's see if I can not drop that. It's a very similar concept to coming in with a crochet hook underneath, grabbing and pulling through. And you know how you pull that off and that's your stitch? Well, it's the same thing, except now I would have to transfer it to this needle. Okay, so it's not something you should be hyping up in your head. So I'm just gonna put that on my needle. Okay, good, I didn't split the yarn. Okay, it's basically the same thing. Now as you knit, your working yarn should be to the left. The one that connects it to the previous stitch should be on the right. Okay? Through, around, through. Through, around, through. Under, over, through. Under, over, and through. Now, like I said, this is why I made that bottom row so stretchy, is because look how easy that was for me to get my first row done. Okay? And look how nice and stretchy that is. It's not overly tight. It's not gonna, like when you do socks or beanies, the last thing you want is the tightest cast on row. This is called casting on. So the last thing you need is a cast on row so tight that you can't even get it over your head, but the rest of the beanie is nice and comfy. Like it just doesn't work that way. So that's why you make that nice and stretchy. And if you look, it's a pretty edge. It's actually very similar to a chain stitch edge in that it gives you the two bars. It gives you the braid look. Okay? So, let me untangle my mess here. Okay. Now we're going to turn our work. So I'm going to take the working end. Let's put everything back on my needle here. We'll go a little faster this row, okay? You can rewind if you want, but let's do this. Okay. So again, there is no chain one. You don't chain one here. Because what happens is, when we come through here, it automatically isn't a working stitch. So it's going to go through. And I'm holding my hands the exact same way as I always did during crocheting. It's a lot easier when I look directly at the work and not through the camera. Now when it starts to bunch up, I don't know if you just saw what I did. I needed to explain that to you. When it starts to bunch up, just pull it off. Make room. Because otherwise it gets caught underneath your hand. And this is a very bulky yarn. I wanted to make sure it was visible, but my camera keeps focusing on the dirt anyways, so I don't see this. I hope it's helping. And then here's that double stitch. Remember I locked in that first stitch? I'm just going to do what I normally would. It's like crocheting two together, right? Knitting two together. And then that's what it looks like. It doesn't look any different. So when you knit both sides as you go along, it is called the garter stitch. This is the garter stitch because I'm knitting when I turn my work all the way around. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So there's 16 stitches there. And that gives you an idea. Now the garter stitch is flat when it's facing you and bumpy when you did the back side. So this is that's the stitch I did coming around the back side of this work. Yes, I can make it all flat. We all have sweaters, socks. That's called the stockinette stitch, and that's a different video for later. But, do I have the right one? Nope, I grabbed the working yarn. Make sure you don't grab your tail. Leave your tail. You don't want to touch that ever again. Okay, so now we're back here, putting my yarn in an easier place to deal with. Still holding my yarn like I did for crocheting. Going under. Oh, see, I split the yarn. Let me go back. So, if you need to go back in the hole you started in and drop that stitch. Ta-da! I stabbed it back here, so let's just smooth that out. Go back in, grab, pull through. Again, no squeaky needles. Otherwise, you have a lot of modifications to make in future patterns when you go to knit. And this is how you knit after being a crocheter. It is called continental knitting. It is continental style. If you Google how to do certain stitches continental as a beginner, you will find what you are looking for on tutorials. Okay? Well, thanks for spending your time with me. Thanks for checking out my video if you made it this long. Appreciate your time. And if you would, hit subscribe below. Maybe give me a little like. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to read that too. Have a good one.